Welcome to Film Logic, a movie podcast about the movies of yesterday, today, and tomorrow with every fandom in between. I am with some eager co-hosts, and they have a lot to say about this episode. But first, let me introduce, we have Adam, who will show you his Twin Peaks if you ask.
All right.
And we have Ivy.
Hello.
Ivy, she loves erasing things.
Yes.
I tried with
Erasing
that one.
heads specifically.
Yes. And then we have Vincent with his hit song, Blue Velvet.
It's one of my favorite jams.
Real.
And of course, I'm Mike, who's always asking, how you Dune?
Oh.
I know, that was horrible.
Oh, it's how you doing?
How you Dune? I sound like a very bad Irish impression. Anyways, who can guess what our episode's about?
Tim Burton.
Ding, 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 ding.
Boo.
Well, before you lynch me, it's going to be a David Lynch episode. Because
I see
of
what
some
you
sad
did there.
news.
Yeah.
He passed away. I mean, he lived a good long life, born in 1946. Most people can't ask for that kind of longevity, but it's sad to see him go. But we are going to honor his life's work in today's episode. All right. So, we'll just jump right into it. How's that sound?
Yep.
Sounds awesome.
It sounds great.
Oogie.
All right. So everyone go around and just share a memory you have of seeing a David Lynch movie. Ivy, we'll let you start first because you have
so like literally like a week ago, because I watched all of Twin Peaks like a year ago, and I recently like wanted to rewatch it, and like right before he died, so that was really weird. But I showed my friend because she had seen bits and pieces, like when I would be watching it at home. And she was like, what even is this show? Mm-hmm. And I showed her the first episode because she wanted to watch it. And my boyfriend had friends over. And when she came out from like watching this episode, she was trying to explain to them what she had watched. And she genuinely was like going insane. Like I can't just like she could not find the words because she was so like her brain was completely fried by one episode of Twin Peaks. And she was trying to explain what she saw and she sounded like an insane person. And it was really, really funny. And she was like, I don't think Twin Peaks is for me. And I was like, okay.
Well, she wouldn't be the first to say that.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds on par, on brand. All right, Vincent, I consider you second place for fanaticism about David Lynch.
Hey.
Share some memories.
Second place is first loser. No. No. Well, my experience with the work of David Lynch probably started in college when my cinema teacher showed us Lost Highway. Came out in 1997, kind of described as a niche surrealist horror movie type of a production, starring Bill Pullman, Patricia Arquette, Robert Blake in his last appearance. It was not well received. I mean, which as far as like popular movies of the day goes, this was 1997. I mean, there were a lot of good movies. There were a lot of like notable films out in the zeitgeist. Lost Highway wasn't really one of them. However, it did have an awesome soundtrack produced by Trent Reznor, frontman of Nine Inch Nails. That's where we get his single "The Perfect Drug." Also had contributions from David Bowie, actually, who made the the intro and outro theme, I'm Deranged. Marilyn Manson had a couple of tracks on there. Rammstein, Smashing Pumpkins. So, I mean, it was very, the soundscape of the film was very much on trend for the mid to later 90s. That kind of, gritty alternative sound. And the movie kind of plays out like if you know what a Mobius strip is. I mean, it's the infinity symbol. It's kind of a visual representation of the Mobius strip because it sort of begins and ends the same way. It was kind of like this decade's Memento, if you will. Yeah. It wasn't a movie that you could just, sit down and watch and immediately understand. I mean, that's not really the hallmark of David Lynch, but my teacher, the way that he discussed the movie with us, it taught us how to look for stories that decide to show, not tell, if that makes sense. I mean, most movies you go to, there's a plot, it goes ABC, there's a conclusion. If it's in a Night Shyamalan movie, there's always a twist at the end. But yeah, Lynch has never been that on the nose, obviously.
Yeah.
And so, that being my experience, really, Lost Highway taught me how to really approach cinema as like an actual art form. It taught me how to really pay attention to what kind of a story filmmakers want to tell with their movies. So, I'm of the opinion that there's no such thing as a bad movie, just a badly told one. Some people might look at Lost Highway and think of it as a badly told movie, but it kind of goes a little deeper than that. I don't want to give too much away in case, any of you guys or anyone listening want to go ahead and check this out on their own later. Oh, last thing, just a bit of random trivia I'd like to share about this. This movie was Richard Pryor's last theatrical appearance. I mean, he did not pass away immediately afterward, but he did this movie. He played a character, and then he retired from filmmaking. It was after he became a paraplegic. So there's that.
Yeah.
Oh.
So fun story. I remember like all the kind of the goth kids in high school getting excited about Lost Highway. And I remember seeing the Nine Inch Nails, the video, "You Are the Perfect Drug."
Yeah,
that was
you are the perfect drug.
And for some reason, till like last week, I thought that was a movie about Trent Reznor. Like some
It
kind
could
of
have been.
It's a biopic.
Something he directed about like monsters on a highway, and you have to like drive out of the way of them. So, little disappointed. It's not what I envisioned, but it still sounds very cool. And for your information, it's got a 70% on Rotten Tomatoes and a popcorn score of 87%. So I don't think it's that. It's not as hated as you think.
Well, it didn't attain commercial success.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
Right.
it was, like you said, it was, one of the interests of the goth kids. Like, this is definitely, like, if there were like 3 movie posters that, a quote unquote goth kid would have in their bedroom, it probably would have been The Crow, The Lost Highway, and
The Lost Boys.
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Adam,
Ew.
what significant memory do you have of David Lynch and his movies?
I in my quest to consume content that is influential, especially in our modern time, Twin Peaks, of course, but that kind of got started when I was really getting into like video games, especially stuff like weird stuff like that Hideo Kojima is doing, or games like Mizurna Falls, and a lot of those are very Twin Peaks influenced, or Kojima just straight up is a Japanese copy paste of some Lynchian things, but even stuff like I bet you didn't know this, that Zelda Link's Awakening was influenced by stuff like Twin Peaks.
Really?
I was not
Yeah,
aware of that.
the writer for Twin Peaks, the other co-creator, Mark Frost, like sat down with some of the storyboard writers for Zelda, and I mean it was just like one conversation, because Twin Peaks was huge over there too, and they just like chopped it up about storytelling, and apparently Link's Awakening is supposed to be like a dream, and they take a lot of inspiration from Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and all that. So yeah, even stuff like Alan Wake and Silent Hill, which are obviously very, very
Mhm.
Twin Peaks coded. Yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and then I've seen his rendition of Dune, which is interesting. It's very much one of his outliers, I think, in terms of his movies. Like it
Yeah, even
doesn't.
he doesn't like that one.
Oh no.
Yeah, he disowns it. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, like, and yeah, because I definitely think that when you look at his like his filmography, you would think someone that's so influential like he is would have a much larger filmography, but he's got 10 movies, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that he was more of a quality over a quantity sort of director in his mind. And yeah, Dune is definitely an outlier in that, in which it's not totally original to.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, Twin Peaks, and then of course Mulholland Drive
Yeah.
are the things that I've seen most, and are the most familiar with. And yeah, just I love how he plays with neo noir, and how he plays with storytelling, and yeah, he's complicated. He's a very complicated, very tortured individual, I would say.
Mhm. Yeah. None of his movies like show a theme or like a genre that he's stuck to. Everything is like totally opposite side of the spectrum, which is
Definitely more of like a Kubrick kind of director than like a Spielberg.
yeah.
Yeah. He uses the same like ideas and like thoughts, but not like, plot points or anything.
Mm.
There's a lot of like dream stuff in his movies, like you said. There's a lot of because in Twin Peaks there's this like lumber mill, and there's a lot about like how the trees are important, a lot of like tree and like wood talk. And then in Blue Velvet, like the whole town is like revolves around that they make lumber. There's a lot of just like little threads. It's like, what does this mean to him? Like, why does it keep popping up in his stuff? And that's what I love, is like a lot of directors could be really pretentious if they did stuff like he does, like, vague, like unexplained, like you have to interpret it for yourself. Because a lot of times when they do that, like there's a meaning to it that they then, put out there, and they're like, well, if you watch it enough, you'll understand it. Like, this is my vision, And he doesn't really do that. He doesn't talk about what it's supposed to mean, even to him. He just lets you decide what you want it to mean. And so it comes across a little more like genuine. Like there's an actual like, thought
Mhm.
process in it, where it's
Yeah.
not just like, I'm trying to confuse you,
Like it's not
Yeah.
trying to be edgy just for the sake
Right.
of edginess.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have much memories of David Lynch. I remember not too long ago I saw the original Dune because I wanted to see what the what was going against Star Wars. You know, I wanted to see what the bottom shelf brand was doing, as I often like to do. So I'm like, you know, he was obviously in the shadow of the Empire Star Wars. So, you know, what is he going to do? And, you know, I was pleased. You know, Frank Herbert is kind of a weird writer. You know, how he makes up phrases and words and like sci-fi stuff. So just attaching that to David Lynch is just like a hat on top of a hat. And I really appreciate that Mr. Lynch could have taken it to like just be like a diet version of Star Wars.
Right.
You know, Jeff in space against evil space lord. And he didn't do that. Like you might say that like Dune is like he might have hated what he did with Dune, but at least you can say that he's never been boring. And
Right.
you can't describe him as like oh, he just drones on and on and on, and you know nothing's pretty or good looking or worth looking at. And no, you know, David Lynch he's going to make you stare at the screen either in bewilderment or joy or confusion.
Yeah.
And,
As long as
know,
you feel something, at least you've felt something.
Yeah, and I mean with Dune, you got guys with like inflating pants flying around the room. And I'm like, okay, you got Sting.
You have
as the
Sting in a
main-
diaper.
Yes, he's the main villain. I mean, these are choices, and I don't think any sci-fi director will ever make these choices. So this is stuck in it's stuck in a time bubble.
Well, in Lynch's defense, I mean, the story of Dune is just massive. It is like a gargantuan sandworm unto itself.
I think I heard that was the problem, is that they wanted it to be like one movie. So they had to like cut stuff and like condense it down, and they kind of like took control of it from him. And that's kind of what made it feel like kind of, you know, weird and cheesy, because it was, you know, it needs to be bigger and longer.
There's a reason why Dune usually gets adapted into a mini series or you know, into more than one part, because
there's so many characters. My gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do think that it's important to like talk about like the difference between like cinematography and like design, because I definitely think that David Lynch falls more on the like production design as opposed to cinematography, meaning that like David Lynch is more concerned about creating a mood and an atmosphere for his projects, and like those little details aren't as important to him. So like adapting is hard for him. Whereas opposed to like what happened with Denis Villeneuve, who's doing, you know, the current Dune project, he's definitely more of a cinematographer, and he very much so cares about what the little details of the shots look like, and he cares about how like the pacing of his storytelling, right? And you know, you look at Blade Runner, you look at Dune, whereas you know with David Lynch, like story isn't that is important to him, but he like story exists merely to explore concepts, and he doesn't really care if it makes sense to you or not.
Yes.
Or if you think about someone like you know, Roger Deakins, who did the cinematography for Blade Runner 2019, for the 2019 Blade Runner. He like there's some overlap, right, with, you know, set design. You know, you see recurring colors and themes and things like that. But with like design, especially with Lynch, like it's literally just like, what's the mood of this movie, right? Like when you settle into Twin Peaks, there's a reason that feels so much different than anything that comes after it. And and it's not necessarily like a coherent story per se, but it's more so about like how you feel, like he just is able to capture the magic of being claustrophobic in a small town, and then out of that he's able to explore into, you know, the metaphysical, which is, you know, it's really cool. But it works for him because it's just based on vibes, as opposed to like someone sitting down and telling you, you know, like telling you that that's what's happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
Exactly. That is like that is on the money right there. I mean,
Yeah.
he worked to make the audience feel something rather
Right.
than just to follow a simple narrative. Well, character A does this to character B, and that's why character B is sad. No, he wants to he always went for that sort of visceral reaction.
Yeah.
To whether it's to convey fear or vulnerability or anger, disgust. Again,
And
it
you
was
can-
more show, not tell.
Yeah. And you can read, like, Twin Peaks or any of his work, like, 10 different ways, and they're all valid. Like, they all make sense. Like, that's what I love about it. You don't have to have one meaning attached to everything.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man. I'm really surprised that his movies didn't get more backlash from like the more literalists being like, man, just tell us A to B what's happening. Tell us.
Well, there kind of was, because that was a whole deal with Twin Peaks, was that the network forced him in the second season to reveal Laura Palmer's killer, and he didn't want to. And I personally thought that it was done very well. I liked it, and I thought the show was still good after that reveal. I still wanted it to continue. But he was right, because as soon as he, revealed the killer, that was the last season of the show, because no one cared anymore because the mystery was gone. So that's why it initially got canceled.
Has anyone
It was like
seen
the whole linchpin of the series.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun. Yes. Has
Yeah.
anyone seen the Showtime reboot?
Yes.
What is it? Is it
Well,
comparable?
I don't care for it a whole lot. I might feel differently if I went back and watched it again. It's just too long after the initial ending to really feel like a good payoff. It's if you're someone who doesn't like regular Twin Peaks, you will hate this. Don't watch it. Because I, who's loved like everything else I've seen from him, loved Twin Peaks, I really didn't enjoy it that much. There were some parts of it that were really good, but overall, it felt like someone trying to imitate David Lynch. And I don't know if I should say that, because it was something that he had like complete creative control of. So I hate saying that, but it just felt very, it was something where to fully understand certain things, you had to read materials that were published, like by like Mark Frost or whatever. And that seems a little silly to me, because I feel like you should be able to watch something and either know what's going on or just, see what you can glean from it, and not have to like read materials to be like, oh, why did this happen to this person? I didn't understand that. Like, just put it in the show. So I don't know. I didn't really care for it a lot.
Yeah. I feel like, it sounds a lot like what J.J. Abrams tried to do with Lost. Nothing, like things just appeared randomly and he didn't have to explain them. And that like just angered the internet, or they just came up with these wild theories about what it is. And then when he had to act and land the plane, so to speak, like everyone was so disappointed. They're like, there's no way you could live up to the randomness of what you were trying to do.
Right. And it is something that like, there was a 4-hour YouTube video I watched of someone like explaining how they interpret Twin Peaks. And I thought it was a really good video, but apparently that video is like really controversial in the fandom, because they don't like how positive he is and he knows what's going on. But like, I just see it as another interpretation. And through that lens, if someone wants to go watch that, The Return makes more sense. But it's like, I don't know, it's like stylistically like way more David Lynch than anything he's ever made. So just be prepared.
Yeah. Now in 2020, he made Netflix video. I'm pulling it up right now. He made What Did Jack Do? Has anyone seen that?
No, but I've heard of it.
It sounds crazy. A detective interrogates a talking monkey that is suspected of murder. I mean, that alone is that's what my imagination's made out of.
Caesar?
Yeah.
So Mike, I mean, I guess my my question for you then is, what? Because it just feels like he's right up your alley, but
Mhm.
I don't know. It just doesn't feel like you've gotten
Yeah.
too much into his stuff. So I mean,
Well-
is there what's the deal?
Like you said, he's more on quality than quantity, and his stuff right now is really hard. Plus, I know that like Twin Peaks is probably the closest thing that I would get into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I keep reminding myself that there's a cool mystery murder show keep me entertained for 2 seasons.
Right.
But then like trying to find said show is harder because his stuff is
Yeah.
like on the artsy film channels for $4.99 a month.
Right.
Which I almost got the 7-day trial for one of them. They had like Blue Velvet, The Straight Story, Mulholland Drive. But then I said, I don't have time for this. I know, but like there's a Nicolas Cage one.
Yeah.
Wild at Heart. I would love to see Nicolas Cage and how he's interpreted,
Yeah,
And
you mentioned. I'm sorry. You mentioned The Straight Story. That's the biographical, semi-biographical. It's the movie about the old guy on the lawnmower. Do you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like an old man.
Mhm.
He lives out in the sticks. He gets a phone call that his only brother had a stroke, and he really wants to go and see him, in case he's about to die. He himself is disabled, so he resorts to packing up, his things on a little trailer and hitching it up to his ride-on lawnmower. And yeah, I remember seeing that one. I forgot that was
Yeah.
a David Lynch
Mhm.
movie. See, he's not like y'all said, it's not all that easy to define who Lynch was as an actor, because he kind of did, all kinds of different things. And I mean, it wasn't very surreal. It wasn't, it was actually quite heartwarming.
Yeah.
Kind of a story to see. It was quirky, sure, and there were quite a few scenes that had like little to no dialogue, but that's about the most wholesome movie that I've seen, much less a David Lynch film.
Yeah, the one movie doesn't give birth to a lizard baby, you mean? In an industrial doom and gloom town?
Lizard Baby made me cry, okay?
It's just reading it makes me cry. So, if I told you that The Straight Story is his highest rated Rotten Tomatoes movie, who can guess what his lowest rated movie is?
I'd say
Lost Highway.
Dune, but that seems too easy.
All right, we have one vote for Dune. Anything else?
My money's probably on Wild Heart.
Okay. All right. Vincent, you want to throw in on this?
I was thinking Lost Highway, just based on like box office numbers.
Well, Dune is at 36% on the critic score with a 65% popcorn meter, which is the lowest in both categories for all his movies.
Dang.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Number 1 is The Straight Story. Number 2 is Blue Velvet. Number 3 is Twin Peaks: The Return Season 1. I guess that was a big deal. Was that the
Dang.
one that you saw that you weren't too crazy about, Ivy?
Yeah, that's like it's technically the third season. I don't know why it says season 1. There's only one season of it. But yeah, it's just Twin Peaks: The Return.
Well, apparently a lot of people on Rotten Tomatoes really liked it.
Dang.
Who knew? And there's some other movies that I'm really curious about. Anyone see The Elephant Man?
I
I
haven't.
have not. No.
All right.
Not his.
Anyone see Inland Empire?
No.
Nope.
Swing and a miss.
They're just on my watch list. I haven't gotten to them yet.
Yes. And ranked at number 13 is the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me movie.
Mhm.
Ivy, have you seen that?
Yes, I did. Actually, when I watched it, I didn't realize it was like the director's cut. So it was like 3.5 hours long or something. It was like 3 hours long. So I got
Ooh.
like the whole experience of that.
You got Snyder cut.
Yeah.
All right.
David Bowie is in it, which
Yes.
is really funny. He's a Southern FBI agent.
Sting looking so good in his Dune movie sparked David Bowie to demand a scene of his own. Yeah.
Wow.
Mike, you were saying that that Wild at Heart wasn't the lowest rated.
Right. It got 65% with an 81% popcorn score. So
Oh,
it's kind of near the bottom. You got Dune at the bottom, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, Twin Peaks Season 2,
Interesting.
and at number 11, you have Nicolas Cage's Wild at Heart.
Okay.
And then Lost Highway on top of it.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I'm
which
glad
brings
that
us to
I recommend the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries for Dune instead of his cut.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it because I had a Dune phase where I just wanted to learn about everything but the most recent movies, which led me to the graphic novels, and then I got a hold of the sci-fi and missed the acting bad, but they love Frank Herbert's. They love the terminology and the lore. You could tell there was a lot of heart in that series. Even if you're cringing at like the acting and I just like the idea of oh yes, he's the man with the dancing face, and I'm like, oh, that sounds weird and scary. All right, that's my Dune story. All right, what I was going to say is, Mount Rushmore. We're gonna have to come together as a team because we all have like a piece of the David Lynch puzzle. As you know, Mount Rushmore has 4, which would be the top 4 movies you think would be on this mountain.
Mm.
I mean, go ahead.
Oh, you're good.
I was gonna say, are we not gonna put Twin Peaks on there?
Okay.
I know it's
Yeah,
not
that's what I was
a
going to
movie.
say.
Okay, it would be a crime not to. So let's put Twin Peaks as a whole, season 1 and season 2. It's one entity.
That's his magnum opus. That's like, the David Lynch masterpiece.
All right, so Twin Peaks, everyone agrees, definitely deserves a head on this monument.
Yeah, either Jefferson or Washington position for sure.
Yeah. Now, my only contribution is going to be this: Dune? Question mark? Maybe for the commercial success? Anything? He'd come out of his grave and slap me if I said that. Is that where we're going with that?
I
It
think
can have its own monument.
Yeah, it needs its own little place, at least just for the scene of, the one guy like floating in the air, whatever character that was, I don't remember.
Yeah, floaty pants.
Evil guy. Yeah.
Floaty pants evil guy.
Yeah.
So we definitely got Twin Peaks on there.
I feel like Eraserhead should be there.
Mm,
Because
it's
very sci-fi, like dystopian, and very creepy. All his stuff is very creepy, but this one has a little bit more creepy imagery, I feel like. And there's a lot of themes in there. There's a lot going on. He said once it was his most spiritual film, and he was asked to elaborate on it, and he said no. So
love that answer. All right, yeah, Eraserhead. I would definitely think that it keeps getting thrown into the conversation. And, you got to love the hair.
Yes.
Of John Nance.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the 3 movies that he's best known for.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a few Oscar picks on the table. Do we want to consider them? We got Mulholland Drive. And we got
Blue Velvet.
Blue Velvet and The Elephant Man got nominated.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't see how you can talk about David Lynch, Mount Rushmore without Blue Velvet and Mulholland Drive. Like those are those are his probably widest known moves and the ones he's for.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
On a tinier mountain, you got Wild at Heart, maybe Inland Empire. Yeah.
He won Best Film at Cannes Film Festival, Cannes, whatever, for Wild at Heart. So I mean, it's not without it's not without recognition. But I mean, no, I do think it has to be, Twin Peaks, Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet. You can throw a 4th one in there. I mean, the cinephile would say Elephant Man, but I've never seen it, so I don't really know.
I think it's on like pretentious 100 movies you see before you die lists.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to argue with 8 Academy Award noms.
True. True.
It's true. Yeah.
Or Lost Highway has got one of those like little obelisks out in the desert, like they have for like the ground zero for like the Manhattan Project test site. That's Lost Highway there out in the desert, all alone.
Well, I'm with you on Lost Highway. Both the movie I thought it was a scary highway with monsters and what it actually is about people's secrets and murders.
I would watch
Anything-
both of those movies.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I'm pitching the idea to Hollywood as we speak.
Nice.
Yeah, I do think that like Lost Highway is the most David Lynch of like his movies, if that makes sense. Where it's just all vibes, no story, all vibes,
Mhm.
And and just the just like Patricia Arquette and Robert Blake just are iconic. Bill
Yeah.
Pullman too, but yeah, I mean it's like to me it's like his most distilled essence of his stuff, but like I definitely think maybe it's not necessarily his quote unquote best work, but I think if you were to ask him, he might say that that's at least his favorite, because it does feel like mostly what his soul is as a creative,
Yeah.
If there was
My professor did describe Lost Highway as kind of like a director's film. Like this was the one where, a director is allowed to go ham on like every single wild and crazy idea they have in their heads.
That's going to sound a lot like the To Be Decided we're going to do. But that's another thing entirely. I think
stay tuned.
Yeah, I think if there was a 90s Mount Rushmore, it definitely would have Twin Peaks and Lost Highway right next to each other.
Yeah, that tracks.
And just, because process of elimination, wild at heart. And I think he did 4 things in the 90s. But you can go on YouTube right now and see the PS2, PlayStation 2 commercial he directed.
I saw that.
It looks crazy.
That was great.
It has vibes. It's called Bambi. It's about a deer and a guy in a car racing down a forested highway. I won't give away the ending, but just think David Lynch thoughts, and you're halfway there.
Wow.
So, as I am landing our David Lynch plane, imagine him on his deathbed. He calls in a director and he passes the torch to the director. Who would that director be?
Mm-hmm.
Adam, you had some good guesses when we discussed this earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think the easiest one is the easiest comp is Chris Nolan. I think there's I do think he's like the opposite side of the same coin of David Lynch, where like David Lynch is more like all vibes, story be damned. Whereas I think Chris Nolan has similar stuff, especially when you see things like Memento and Tenet and stuff like that. But I do think that Christopher Nolan is more he cares more about like the story that he's telling, and he wants people to figure out his movie, as opposed to where like David Lynch is like, I don't care if you figure it out. I don't even know. Like, even I don't think that there's, an answer to my movies. Where Christopher Nolan's like, no, if you watch, Inception enough, or if you watch Tenet enough, or if you watch, whatever enough, it'll make sense to you. But yeah, I think Chris Nolan's a good comp. I threw out, and I talked about Kojima also recently. I know he's more of a video game guy, but you're telling me if you played Death Stranding that you don't get, David Lynch vibes as you're carrying a baby in a artificial womb across a sci-fi desert, and that's not David Lynch. I don't know what to tell you. I think maybe my like if gun to head, if I were to pick someone, I think it would be Bong Joon-ho. He's famous obviously for Parasite, but he also
That's a
of
good
course
one.
did
Mm-hmm.
Snowpiercer, and so he's also doing obviously the upcoming movie Mickey 17. But yeah, his stuff is also very like surrealist, but also dealing with reality, but looking at reality from different perspectives. And
Mhm.
he really does play with the audience's perspectives,
Mhm.
especially with Parasite. Like Parasite is just chef's kiss. But
Yeah.
Mhm. I would say that the one theme that runs through David Lynch is unpredictable choices,
mm,
or ones that just
True.
don't seem like they would make a good movie. Like, who wants to look at a guy with an elephant face? No, audiences would hate that. He's like, that's what I want. Who wants to give birth to a lizard baby? Sounds like an awful idea. That's what I want. Hold my beer. I'm going to make 1,000 awards out of this.
Hold my Coke.
Yeah, talking monkey. That sounds like it's for kids. You could never make that for an adult. Hold my pretentious martini. I'm gonna make it and get 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Hold
So
my nitro brew espresso martini.
yeah. So I just think he looks at like things that just you can imagine a studio saying that's unmarketable. No one's gonna want to see that. Why would you? Oh man, and him just being like, I'll
Challenge
make it work.
accepted.
Right. There's like your movie has like a guy who, a TV show where a guy is in love with a log, no
And
one wants this. I mean, finally, this is just a fun thing to do. Think of a movie, any franchise, any series that you think would be amazing if David Lynch took a crack at it.
I have the perfect answer. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just hit us over the head with it.
go for it.
So, all David Lynch movies, the whole thing is like, you're thrust into this just like madness and you just have to accept it, like the town, the setting is just like, doesn't make any sense, and no one there questions it, no matter how weird the people are or the events and like the strange supernatural things that happen. Everyone just accepts it and it's just part of their reality. What other genre is just like mainly just that? Anime. I think if David Lynch directed, a Dragon Ball movie, a JoJo movie, like come on, like that would go hard.
He'd probably pick JoJo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I feel like that would be the best thing ever?
Yeah. Well, part 4 is actually kind of inspired, I feel like, by Twin Peaks. Because one of like the side villains in it is named after the composer that he worked with a lot, Angelo Badalamenti. And a lot of the little plot points in it with like, the serial killer in the town and like,
Yeah,
the
Yoshikage
secrets and
Kira.
everything. Yeah, it's very Twin Peaksy. So
I can see that. Wow.
Yeah.
Like
I can totally see that.
that is definitely a hat on top of a hat. Putting JoJo and then adding that extra factor. That I feel like it would be like only 3 people would own it, and it's on eBay for $65,000. The VHS.
Yeah. It's lost media.
Yeah.
You can only watch it on a CED.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to go to the Library of Congress, ask for a copy of it.
Yeah.
You got to wear little white gloves. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Who's next?
Well, I think it's building off that, if you're interested in works that are definitely inspired by Lynch and also have inspired like other directors that we've talked about, like Chris Nolan, if you take a look at any of Satoshi Kon's works, famously he did Perfect Blue and Paprika. Paprika, which is of course inspired Inception, like that whole hallway sequence in Inception where they're like twisting and moving and running around. That's taken basically wholesale from Paprika, and this other anime movie called Perfect Blue. It's about a
I really want to
um,
watch that.
it's very good. It's about a member of a Japanese idol group who retires from music to like be an actor, and she kind of gets like wrapped up in this like stalking by this obsessive fan, and out of that, there's like a bunch of like gruesome murders kind of take place, and she kind of loses her grip on reality, and it's very like Blue Velvet. So
It even has
yeah,
blue in it.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So definitely check those two out.
Yep. All right, Vincent.
Well, I thought about this. I thought about this a while, and I thought, what could David Lynch have done to redeem himself for Dune? Like,
Ooh.
how could he get like a second shot, or like how could he get his redemption arc from Dune? And being that, he kind of had a good amount of popularity in the 90s, my mind went to The Fifth Element.
Oh.
Now, Luc Besson, very good director, great director in his own right. I mean, not dogging on him at all. I mean, if you've seen Fifth Element or Lucy, he's got a very particular vision. It's just a little bit more so contrived. It's more so, the straight connect the dots, opening 3-paragraph, essay, conclusion paragraph type of work that he does. I mean, if you're not familiar with Fifth Element, basically it's Die Hard in space. I mean, that's
Quite literally.
Just imagine, Bruce Willis playing Corbin Dallas, headcanon. He's a like 300-year, generation grandson of John McClane. And it's weird, it's quirky, it's funny. Chris Rock is just a freaking
Chris
riot.
Tucker?
Oh, Chris Tucker. I'm sorry.
Yes,
My bad.
Chris. But I can see where you would.
Sorry, Chris Rock. But yeah, Chris Tucker. Yes. And the big bad, not the big bad, but was it Gary Oldman who was the Zorg guy, the CEO?
It's Gary Oldman.
Yeah. Also, great performance, but still, it felt a little too connect the dots for me.
Wasn't Billy Bob Thornton in that too, or is that like something I incepted?
That might be something incepted.
Don't recall.
Maybe Gary Oldman was doing a great Billy Bob Thornton impersonation. I don't know. Well, no, I didn't come here to add confusion. Continue.
I mean, it was kind of, it was a movie that was, trying to capitalize on the cyberpunk aesthetic that was pretty common in that time period. And, Besson did a decent enough job. I mean, there's some existential dread of, some kind of, outer space doom, like eldritch being that's going to annihilate Earth if these artifacts aren't positioned, out in Egypt the right way. But then there's, like a little bit of commercialism. Like, I feel like McDonald's got a lot of free press in that movie. Like, it's 300 some odd years in the future. Smog covers like the first 50 stories of Los Angeles, but we have McDonald's.
Yeah.
McDonald's is forever.
McDonald's is eternal.
That's a great answer. All right. Mine, I immediately went to something that he would have a lot of fun with, and probably comic book fans would hate it, but some of them would love it. Like they'd be like a civil war between Lynch and his take on the Spider-Man movie. So instead of Raimi,
Which
you
one?
have David Lynch. You have like these trippy scenes where Peter Parker's turning into a spider, a real life spider. some weird imagery where it keeps showing a web with like a widowmaker in it, and it keeps going back, and people are like, "Is that supposed to be a symbolism for a villain?" And he'll never answer.
I can definitely see it. More
Yeah.
of a Kafkaesque angle
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Instead of turning into a cockroach, he's turning into a spider. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Existential dread of turning into an insect.
And the whole with great power comes great responsibility. But like Lynch turns it on his head, where like Peter Parker kills people irresponsibly, and it doesn't explain why he does that or like how that fits in. You just leave it, and there'd probably be no main villain. Like something crazy, like the villain was society, guys. The Vulture was you, and
capitalism.
Yeah, and just like crazy stuff like that, and like it would cause an implosion where comic book movies never got big in the early 2000s, and it would ruin the time stream.
The whole timeline would change.
Yeah, so
what that world line would look like.
Yeah.
No Bully McGuire memes.
Yeah. No Deadpool memes. Well,
sorry, I would also be remiss if I didn't toss out Alfonso Cuarón. Obviously, famously did Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, but he also did Children of Men, Gravity, and Roma. But he's cited, Lynch as like very stylistically someone that's influenced him. But he especially if you like look at like Children of Man and Prisoner of Azkaban, like they're very like surreal, very like dystopian neo-noir action thriller kind of stuff. So toss him in there.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that none of you said 50 Shades of Grey.
I don't know. It gets kind of close sometimes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I would.
Can we get an option to just like cut and paste, the next David Lynch over, a director we already have? We could always use another David Lynch. We don't need another Michael Bay.
Yeah.
So you're saying cloning? We should do just straight up cloning?
Yeah. Cloning, cybernetics, Android AI deepfakes, whatever it takes.
Well, yeah, that's one way to fix cinema, is to bring back the dead.
I also feel like Nightmare on Elm Street would have been a really good one by him. And he's already so, obsessed with like dreams and like all that trippy.
Dreamscapes,
yeah, that would be even creepier.
Well, I think we've landed this plane quite nicely. And
yeah.
I consider David Lynch remembered and memorialized, and I'm so glad we had this conversation.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
I don't know much about his personal life, but he always seemed like a very nice, happy, gentle man. So,
yeah. Well, if you're interested in him, he's a painter, he's a photography person, he's a writer, and he produces. So he's a deep rabbit hole. So I would start now, and maybe when you're 50, you'll be done.
He lived the dream.
Yeah.
And unappreciated in his own time.
And if you're looking to scratch the itch of Twin Peaks, check out a miniseries called Sharp Objects. Very, very good. Marty Noxon directs it, or was created, and Amy Adams is in it. Very, very, obviously, very, very incredible. It's also one of
based on a book.
Based on a book.
Yeah.
Also one of Sydney Sweeney's early roles too. But it's about an alcoholic journalist that was just released from a psychiatric hospital, and she goes back home to her hometown to investigate the serial murder of two young girls. And it's about like her trying to figure that out while also dealing with being back in her hometown, small town, dealing with that small town drama. So if you're looking to scratch that itch, Sharp Object.
Well, there you have it, folks. David Lynch is with us, and we are eating well. Well, join us next week as we play another episode of To Be Decided. And which episode are we doing? We are doing the bootleg called Dragon Ball The Magic Begins. And a lot of interesting and hot takes on this wonderful, quirky fan fiction? Question mark? Well,
Yeah.
it's free on Tubi, so we're gonna let you decide. Anyways, I've been Mike.
I'm Adam.
I cease to be Ivy. I disappear into the David Lynch void.
Again.
And I suppose I'm still Vic.
All right. Thank you for joining us.